What are we on? This is YouTube. We're on YouTube. We're on YouTube. Been wanting to do this for a while. Welcome everybody. Glad you're here. Welcome, Ilona. Glad you're here. We have something special for you today, so you're going to help us. You didn't know it, but we're going to make you help us this morning. So anyway, I just want to kind of give us a report, or give a report over this past week. The last 2 weeks, we've been pretty busy around here with our wedding side of our business, of our ministry here, and we had free weddings on Valentine's Day, and we were covered by Channel 7 News, so we were excited about that, and it was thrilling, and everybody had fun, and we had all these wonderful people that were working with us, and we had a DJ and a couple other officiants that helped us, and they videotaped Jess doing a whole wedding on Channel 7 News here in Denver, and so it was free. It was absolutely free, and it was funny because the reporter kept asking me, "This is really free?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's really free," and he just couldn't wrap his head around the idea that it was free.
He asked us, like, how do you explain to people that spend all that money on their weddings that this is the same thing?
Yeah, I think he was trying to ask himself that question.
Yeah, well, and by their answers, that's really what got reflected in the
piece. Yeah,
that intention and that ceremony.
Yeah. So the night before, though, and if you get a chance to watch the videos, you'll see Jess was. She was spot on. I don't know how she did it, but she was spot on. And she did the interview and she did the wedding. And the night before, she was down at the state capitol till 2:00 in the morning, 3:00 in the morning, testifying on behalf of, along with the Interfaith Alliance and our work with them. And so she read some testimonies and then did her own speaking, and all the hate bills that were being presented were defeated, and big victory. And so I bailed about 10:00 because I just couldn't make it anymore. And she was right back here in the morning, started to do weddings, and we had people walking in, and it was just a blast. So anyway, so all the people that helped us that day, our wedding chapel manager, Randy Lovett, did a great job of putting things on. David Smith from Shindig DJs, Marie from Marriages by Marie. Who else was here? Chris Moore from Chris Moore. Danielle was here, our new officiants, Ilya. Yeah, those were our team. But and Ilona, you cleaned the church. Thank you. Yeah, photographers, Mackenzie and Christina. So thank you we gave you a special announcement in the Facebook for cleaning up here because we needed it. And so anyway, before we get started, I want to put up something on our little altar here. So because we're an interfaith church, we have different things up here that are a reflection of what we're trying to make a statement of, is that truth can be found in so many different areas and ways and religions and faith journeys that we're on. And we're all on different paths, but we respect each other and we walk the path together because we live together in this world. So we always strive to find things that are unique to who we are. So I have something that, you see that little frame there, Ilona?
Yes.
I want you to put this picture on that frame, and I think you'll know why.
Oh, yes, I do know why. Yes, my husband's motto in life. Oh, beautiful.
Now
Thank you, Reverend.
So let us have a moment of prayer in reflection. Thank you, Lord, for all of your grace and your love and your kindness and goodness that we find in one another. Thank you for your blessings in our ministry here, and the peace and comfort that we find from each other. And we are blessed. And we are blessed by the word goodness that came to us from Victor and Ilona. Give us your grace today. Help us find it in so many different ways. Amen. Okay. Whew. Get it together here. Okay, Lent. We're almost going into Lent, 2020 in Lent. It's kind of a big deal. Most people approach Lent as if, oh, it's Lent. What am I going to give up this year? I got to give up chocolate. I got to give up beer. I got to give up
heroin every year.
Yeah.
I give up heroin.
Yeah, Jess gives up heroin every year because that's easy. One of my favorite movies at Lent is the movie Chocolat. And if you ever get a chance to see that, it's so beautiful because the whole town is plagued by this little chocolaterie in France that just tempts the whole city, this little village, and tempts them and causes them all to fail miserably at Lent. And Lent, I didn't grow up celebrating Lent because I grew up in more of an evangelical church. We didn't celebrate these things, but I discovered it much later on in my own life and ministry, and I've always appreciated it from a different perspective. So I'm not going to tell you about giving up anything because I don't believe in that. Some people have done some really creative things about Lent, giving up of our stuff. So everyone in the 40 days of Lent, I have one group, I've got a letter from some group where they encourage you every week to put out a trash bag or some bags in your home and to lighten your load, give away coats or clothing that you're not wearing or things, give up something that benefits other people. So some people, I grew up watching, when I was growing up, I remember on my Catholic side of the family, they wouldn't eat meat and except on Fridays, and they only ate fish. And so it always struck me as odd because I didn't get it. But I wanted to talk about Lent, about some different opportunities that we can take in our lives. And so Lent starts this Wednesday, the 26th, and it goes through April 29th. And so I'm excited about it because we're going to do some different things throughout Lent that will help us understand what Lent is about in our lives. So the first one that I want to share with us in Lent is take the opportunity to stop. Stop what we're doing. Stop what drives us. Stop what pushes us. And if you're like me, I'm a workaholic. I work. And nothing I hate worse than having to stop and wait for other people. So this week, I was really stressed out because and I was joking with Jess, kind of joking, but I wasn't. This morning, I was like, where was everybody this week? I didn't hear from anybody this week. And so, I saw Jess because she was here in the chapel in the office, but I was like, where is everybody? I don't get it. I need answers now. And she was like, yeah, I know. You always need answers. So,
he gets very challenged. He can't find people exactly what he wants.
Yes. So take the opportunity to stop. Just stop. Some people say stop and smell the roses. Stop and, experience people and nature, but stop. That's hard. That's hard for people like me that are just work. And so one of the funny things that we're doing right now is my wife is working at this paramedics company, and she has to be at her shift at 5 o'clock, on shift at 5 o'clock in the morning. And so she has to go to bed early. And I'm a late night person. I like to be up late, and I'm always doing something. Danny goes crazy because I'm sending out emails and tagging her on those emails to brides and grooms and stuff all evening long. And now my wife's like, I can't sleep while you're up, so you have to go to bed when she goes to bed. So I'm started about a month ago going to bed at 9:00 at night. And now I'm like, I hit 8:30 and I'm like dozing off on the sofa. I'm like, it's time to go to bed. And I hate falling asleep in a chair, so I go to bed. And I think we push ourselves so hard that we forget how to stop. Many cultures and many religions have learned the value of stopping and meditating, stopping and experience life, stopping and experiencing home and family, and whether you call it a Sabbath or a sabbatical, we forgot how to stop and just live life. I have, and it's a really strange place to be when we realize I just need to stop. And I think that's one of the benefits of what Jess does with the yoga classes. Is you guys learn how to just stop in a moment. And so I just push myself until I just fall asleep at my desk. And I wake up and Jess is standing in the door of my office looking at me like, and she's probably taking some odd picture. So give yourself a sabbatical. Teach ourselves how to stop, experience. So if in 40 days, give up. One of the things to give up would be then the rat race of life, of having to push and push and push and push and push and push. So give yourself a sabbatical. The second one is learn how to breathe. Learn how to breathe. That's one of the great lessons that Jess is teaching, but it makes me think of when I was my first pastorate, and I was in Minnesota, and I would in the spring have to drive. I was pastoring 3 churches at the same time, little churches, and I'd have to drive all along. And Minnesota was a farming community, and I grew up in Denver, so I didn't have to. You didn't focus on things like that. Growing up in Denver, the oddest thing you smelled was when you drove by the Purina dog factory and you smelled dog food being made, which you're from Denver if you know what that smell is. But I remember driving near Waseca, Minnesota, near the farm, and they had just turned the soil over to start the planting season. Just before, it was still cold, it's a little wintry, springtime, and they started running the plows and just turning these big mounds of dirt, and it was deep and red and black or whatever, and rich. And the first time in my life I remember ever smelling the soil. And I thought, wow, this was, and I remember that for 4 years of driving, going, what an incredible, and it caught me because I remember catching the smell. Maybe it's the spring smells that we learn when we smell that first spring rain, and what that smells like, and just all the new things that we take. And so take that time to stop and enjoy life, learn how to breathe. I like Jess has an Uncle Greg, and he, in the spring and summer, he puts pictures on Facebook of him taking his shoes off and standing in the grass and the dirt, and to feel that connection to the earth. So the second was learn how to breathe. Just learn how to stop and take a breath. Smell the flowers, smell the things. This year when we do our Easter service, I'd like to do it outside in the grass, and I always have the ladies do the sermon, the Easter sermon, because I think women were the first preachers at the tomb, at the resurrection tomb. So, and take our shoes off and connect to the earth right there. So learn how to breathe. The third one is ask those big questions, who we really are. Who am I? What defines me? What makes me? Who am I really in my life? We put on all kinds of facades. So one of the things that Jess and I talk about a lot is that when we go off and we do things as when they ask for us to speak as clergy and ministers, and we put on our collars, and that collar for that moment defines who we are. It shapes our answers. It shapes our conversation. It changes the way we speak sometimes. It changes the way people look at us. And when they see a minister and two ministers sitting there having a coffee or lunch or something, and but that's not who we are. Putting on a collar doesn't define who we are. Wearing a cross when we speak doesn't define who we are. And we forget to ask those questions. We wind up being shaped by how people perceive us. What defines us? Is it my work? Is it what defines me? I hope not, because our work falls short. There's nothing more frustrating for me being a workaholic if I'm sick and I'm like, oh, I can't work. That defines me, and it drives me crazy because I don't want to be defined. That's what defines me. And sometimes I need to learn how to just stop and rest. Maybe when we start looking deep in ourselves, we realize that we're lonely. We're lonely because we need the things and the people we really need around us. We've pushed away because we're so busy being what defines us. So who are we? Who we really are? Ask that question. And what are our basic needs? That's an important one, because we wind up with so many things that we don't even really need, and we focus on those things. I want this and I want that, but what do I really need? And does it really satisfy something deep in my heart and deep in my soul? I would have to probably say 90% of the stuff that we think we need, we don't. 90% of the stuff we think we have is not worth much. We spend a lot of money on it, but it's not worth much. Does it really satisfy me? Does it bring joy to my heart and my life? Does it bring passion to me, or is it just something that is just more stuff? And so ask the question of who we really are deep down inside. The fourth one is, what are we really doing with our time on earth? That's a pretty heavy question. We've had in the last 6 months, a lot of death, and I've done funerals, and those are big questions. What do we really do? And that's what I thought about with this goodness, because Victor came into our midst with Ilona, and in a short moment changed our life with a word. And so if all of his time on earth was for this moment, I'm going to accept that, because it changed our life and it changed our ministry. I remember several years ago doing a funeral and officiating a funeral. And this woman had died, and I did several funerals for this family. And this woman had died, and she was the wife of a son who had died, and I did his funeral. And I couldn't find one person to say one nice thing about this woman. Not one nice thing. And I was trying to get the funeral, planning, talking, and nobody liked her. Even the family didn't like her. But it shocked me when everybody was at the funeral, because, this family was known for having great potlucks at church. So they all showed up for the potluck for this woman that nobody liked. And I found this one relative from Las Vegas who read this obscure, odd poem that made absolutely no sense. but it stuck in my head because I thought, how do you get to the end of your life, however tragic or expected it may be, and no one can find one good thing to say about you? Her children didn't like her. Family didn't like her. Nobody. It was the weirdest funeral. And the only thing I could preach for this funeral was that no matter how we felt or what we experienced, God loved her. She was still a child of God, made in God's image. So death comes to us all. And we ask ourselves, what are we really doing with our time on earth? So we have not just 40 days of Lent to think about what we are communicating and giving in our life, but we have a whole lifetime because we know death comes to all of us, to kind of wrap it all up. And the last one is, what are we willing to die for? What are our passions? What are things for a mother? There's nothing more than her children. She would die for her children. She would give up everything for her children and sacrifice for her children. It's kind of in your maternal instinct because you birthed this child, and you're so protective of that child. Sometimes it was always odd. I remember meeting a lady one time who left her husband and left her kids and just went on with a new life. And that always struck me as odd because I grew up with a single mother who worked 2 or 3 jobs because she had to support us. We were everything. To see a woman who would give up everything, give up her children and her family, was just odd to me. And then I meet fathers who have, give up and walked away from families. But what are you willing to die for? I hear people sometimes, I would give anything for that car. I would die for that car. The new Corvette just came out. I would die to have one. And so I was sitting with some friends the other day, and they were talking about how much they loved cars. And I have no interest in cars at all. It's just a transportation vehicle from point A to point B. And if you know me, I don't even hardly take care of them. And 2 years ago, I blew up an engine in my car because I just totally for a whole year forgot to change the oil in my car. Huh? I was on my way to a wedding.
Where?
In Lyons, Colorado. Jessica saved me. So what are you willing to die for? What are your passions in life? What really drives you? Last week when Jess and I were at the state capitol, and we always want to put ourselves out there for things that we're passionate about, and we didn't do any of that last year. None of that. We were just kind of driven by our business and weddings and things like that. And we sat there and started listening to the testimony, and she looked at me and said, "This is where we belong." That was our passion. And so those are our passions: helping others, giving ourselves to others. And what gives our lives meaning? The psalmist wrote, "Be still and know that I am God." And it's in those moments that we're still and we're quiet and we breathe and we connect with each other. We stop and we discover the divine in our lives. We discover the bigger meanings in life. And it's not the new car. It's not the new clothes. It's not the latest this, the latest gadget. It's none of those things. And we discover something in life that's deeper and has more meaning. And we discover the beauty of God in our lives. And we discover the beauty of God in other lives, in other experiences, in other expressions, in other religions. And we discover goodness. So that's what Lent is for 2020. I'm not going to tell you what to give up. I'm not going to tell you what's good to give up because I'm not good at that. Giving up and sacrificing. There's a whole new diet plan out there about which includes fasting, and I've never been good at that, so I'm not going to fast for Lent. I'm going to enjoy the things that I enjoy, but I want to challenge us to live a little deeper, to stop, to smell, to breathe, to ask the questions about life and who we are, and discover our passions. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. That is Lent for 2020. So join us here each week as we discover Lent and challenge ourselves and our hearts to find more about Lent. Jess, give us some announcements for the week. All right.
It's a mellow week around here. We've got some good yoga going on. We've got the kids and the grown-ups classes going on at the same time on Tuesday at 9, Wednesday at 9, and Thursday at 10:30. And then I believe next Saturday, but I need to double check that. Keep an eye out. We're going to be adding some Wedding Ceremonies 101 courses to the schedule this week. For next month. So if you're interested in learning how to officiate a wedding or just kind of learning more about what we do, that's an option for you. Just chat with us, chat with me. We'll get you hooked up with that. And we are working on some more cool yoga workshops and stuff that'll be announced soon too. For the most part, we're just kind of in recovery from Valentine's Day and just breathing for a few minutes, taking that moment of breath like Sam talked about so beautifully. As I like to call it in the hatha, it's like that yin moment where you move a whole bunch and then you pause. I make people lay on the ground with their ears on the ground. So we're putting our ear on the ground for a minute, but we'll be back up and running pretty quickly. Really, I think that's a majority of it today. Just not a whole lot going on. Join me Wednesday night for Bhakti Yoga. It's always a fun class. And I look forward to seeing all of you. I hope you have a blessed week. Thank you.